And welcome to our Google Hangout on Nixon and Dovey. We have our VIP Booster Club member here, Dawn from Edmond, Oklahoma. Dawn, how are you doing tonight?
Good, good. Good to be with you.
Good. Well, Dawn Fitzwater, our friend here, has had the opportunity to read a pre-release version of the Nixon and Dovey novel, and Dawn has some great insight on some of the characters and some of the things that made him want to continue to read the book. So let me start by asking you what it was that drew you to the Nixon and Dovey novel. What made you not want to put it down?
Well, if you don't mind me just kidding a little bit, I saw the name of the book, Nixon and Dovey, The Legend Returns, and I actually kind of was hoping it was two books in one, because I thought when it said The Legend Returns, I thought it was talking about me. But once I got into it, I found that that wasn't a fact, and I persevered anyway. And so it really comes down to I'm generally a nonfiction kind of reader, and I just thought that I'd heard that the book was a historical fiction. I thought that might be interesting as a change of pace for me, and so that's what got me into it. And then once I was into it, like most of the books that I read, probably others read, I'm just looking for a book to take me someplace else, and I'm looking for some interesting characters that I can kind of grow with through the book. I typically give it 40, 50 pages or so to see if it's going to work. And within that time frame, I did start getting interested in some of the characters. So I kept on going, and it got more and more interesting as it went along, and that's what I generally like to see in a book.
So, other than our main hero, Nick, which character or two did you particularly enjoy?
Well, I'm going to have to say that in most of the reading I do, especially in a fictional sense, I tend to kind of gravitate toward the male or guy characters. But in this particular one, I was really drawn to Dovey Caldwell. She's a young and innocent girl from the New World aristocracy of North Carolina, and she, to me, there was more asked of her in this story than anybody else. I'm convinced she gave more than anybody else, and so as time goes on, I just grew to really respect and admire her. And another quick one, I've got two or three others, but another quick one is Judge Baldy Henderson. He's the barrister who defends Nixon in a lot of his trials and tribulations with the legal system. He's also from that New World aristocracy, which at first doesn't sound like it'd be a match made in heaven, him defending Nixon, but after a while he does get involved with him, and I think he actually started to kind of come over to Nixon's side and believe in him, and believe that the plight that he was dealing with was really a raw deal and needed to be righted. He's a real crusty, experienced character, and very innovative in the way he does things. So he's a very interesting character to me.
So which scene particularly sticks in your mind as moving or memorable?
Well, I guess I'm going to be drawn to the scene where, and I don't want to ruin it for everybody, but one of the main villains of the book, by the way, very interesting villains in this book, but one of them is killed. And that's a decision that changes Nixon's life forever. It's a point of no return. And so therefore it's a real interesting scene to me. And I think most people would, well, the case is made at least at that point that that was a justified killing, if you believe in justified killings in a frontier justice kind of way. But that's also going to be a debatable point with a lot of people now as they read the book, just as it was when it actually happened years ago. So it's an interesting moment in the book for sure.
So every good novel has its villains. Which do you think were despicable, and which would you like to share with us?
Well, the two most despicable to me is Ben Wilson and Johnny Stimson. They're cut of the same mold. They're integral to this plot. There's a strong story of good and evil through this book, all the way through. Obviously, they're on the evil side. Now, Ben Wilson, he's kind of I guess a polished on the surface kind of guy, but he's flawed and devious, a really bad guy. Now, the other fellow, Johnny Stimson, that he runs with, there's no pretense of anything redeeming about him. He's just flat out mean and crude, and he'll take anybody out that gets in his way. So I really I grew to almost hate that guy, and I was actually thinking that as a promotion for the book, if there were a time travel token given out, I would be very attracted to that, because I would probably venture back into time and shoot Stimson myself. So that's what kind of bad guy he is.
I love that. So we have Jay sitting here waiting in the wings. If you had a question for Jay, what would you ask him?
Well, there's the Baldy Henderson character. I mentioned that he's really a creative kind of guy, and there's, gosh, 2 or 3 top trials in this thing. He comes up with all kinds of novel defenses. One of them in particular I've never even heard of, and so it made me even want to check and see if that was really even possible in a court of law. So I guess I'd ask him on that one particular case when they're really ready to dismiss charges against Nixon, and the term is without prejudice. And in the end, his attorney says, no, I don't want these charges dismissed. I want a verdict. So the judge is incredulous, and he says, well, what are you asking me? And he says, I'm asking you to give directions to the jury to find my client not guilty. And I thought, I've never heard of that. So I'm just wondering, what's the background on that? Is that real, or is that fiction too?
No, actually, that particular technique came from a couple attorneys that I had that helped in the trial scenes, which are pretty critical and dynamic. And that particular one is actually a judicial maneuver where he knew he was winning and the defense wanted off. They wanted to just drop the charges, we'll come around later. And Baldy Henderson said, no, we're not going to do that. That's based upon, it's fictional, but it's based upon a very valid legal maneuver. The other thing is, though, that Baldy Henderson, from the true point of view, the real facts and the events, is that Nixon Curry got a hearing in front of the Supreme Court, the North Carolina Supreme Court, based upon a highly unusual, and as of the last article I read about him, which was in the 1920s published, was still being researched and still being studied in the law books, because whoever heard of something like this? It was incredibly unique, still believed unbelievable, unachievable, and that's how he got his opportunity to go before the Supreme Court. So I think the answer is yes, in a fictional manner, all those maneuvers and the opportunity and basis by which he got to the Supreme Court were all based on fact and current maneuvers.
Well, that's pretty fascinating, and it's interesting to know how much research went into that so that you could present reality in a way that was interesting and exciting and engaging. So we thank you, Jay, and we thank you, Dawn, for joining us tonight. I'd like to invite our viewers to join us on the website, nixonanddovey.com, and here's nixonanddovey.com, so you can get it right when you type it into the address bar. As a sign-up as an early Booster Club member, you can read a pre-published copy of Nixon and Dovey. You can participate in a hangout like we did tonight, and you can also provide input to our author, Jay Curry. And then you can sign up to receive notification when the book is released. And if you participate in a Google Hangout and as a Booster Club member, you'll receive a free copy of the ebook when it is released and an opportunity to buy at the author's cost a special limited edition of the printed book stamped author's copy with Jay's written note of appreciation for your help with the Nixon and Dovey. So I don't know about you, but that sounds like some great incentives for joining us. Again, thank you for joining us tonight on this Google Hangout to discuss Nixon and Dovey, and we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you, Dawn.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.